You know what really sucks? You know what really, really fucking sucks? Democracy. Everything about democracy is about that it can't be a pity. It can't be a pity for anyone. And it can't be a pity for whatever group you decide that you belong to. So if it's the rich, it can't be a pity for the rich paying taxes. If you belong to the poor, it can't be a pity for you for the rich not paying for you. If you belong to the military, it can't be a pity for you. That blah 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 blah. It can't be a pity, and the whole thing is structured on law, tradition, and morals, and those three will simply never give you any sort of freedom. Whatever you choose, whatever you go through, wherever you go, you're always going to be subjugated to the fact that it's your legs, that it's your freedom, and that it's your gratitude. But around you, you got democracy defining for you that it can't be a pity for anyone else but you and you. Now, you come from nature, and everything you do in nature is being a creature of violence. As a female, your objective is to get violated. That's why you're built weak, to get violated, to have the offspring, while the male produces his gratitude using you as a furniture. Now, this is, of course, controversial, but that's how the rules are. You come from a history of 3.9 billion years of evolution, where every one of your ancestors has to fight their asses off to get to where you are today while you're whining that it's a pity for you. 6,000 years ago, the markets showed up. The markets defined that the rich man and the most procreating man, the one with the most hookers, got the most laid and defined the most of our species today, intellectualism, while everything else prior was designed and defined by the male's violence. Then Christ comes along 2,000 years ago and says that it can't be a pity and that you should love your neighbor and all this bullshit. It's not that Christ is wrong, he's a wonderful man, but it doesn't apply. What applies is La Rosa Concilia, that it's your legs. That regardless of everything you're doing, you are, and it's your legs. It's your fucking journey. And it doesn't belong to anyone else but you to be grateful on your fucking legs. Therefore, democracy is not a solution for you because it defines for you that your gratitude should be defined through the constructs and concepts of society. Now, this leads you to understand that everything you understand is wrong. That whatever you desired, it's mostly a construct of escapism based on the fact that you get to have a gizmos because that soothes the pain. Now have this little gizmo, little human, then you won't be in an existential dread as we ravage you and force you on the labor market from your 15 till you're 72, where you might or might not survive too, and from which you will be so old and gray there'll be no fun for you, no sex for you, and no future for you, but being aware surrounded by idiots who can't navigate, while you yourself are just waking up at that time to the fact that you've been screwed over your entire life in order to produce for a system that doesn't give a fuck about you, abuses you, and doesn't want you to have a damn fucking thing. Now that's who you are, human. A person who in the schools learns everything about what goes on around you so you can't navigate in yourself. And in that time, absolutely nothing about what goes on inside of you so you can't navigate in yourself, making you a docile, confused sheep, manipulated and hypnotized, which they do through micro cuts in the TV shows. So you believe that the things on TV is relevant for you, even though you're born in a world that didn't have this fucking thing 100 years ago, and who never ever wanted anything from you in that position of sitting there, absorbing their bullshit, but eating the shit of the masses. That's spiritual, leaving you in a constant stressful circle of depression. So whenever you watch TV and force feed yourself with that shit, you have a few little spikes of joy, while the rest is just shit from anyone else also watching this in combined uniform mass meditation with all the shit of their failed lives, which again isn't explained in all these TV shows how to get out of, just enforce the angst, so you become even more depressed and even more angst, and go to the kiosk with shaking hands as the colored guy behind the counter at age the colored girl at age 17 with a scarf gets you so paranoid and scared that you don't want to go there, and then you start drinking, and then you become lonely, and at some point you meet somebody who you might think is interesting to shag a little bit, and then you do that a lot or a little bit, but then none of you has the tools to understand how to navigate in your mutual relation, because you don't learn that either. You're just told that love is 1.5 hours of love affair, and they always become unhappy because none of you has a clue, because you never learned. And that's your fucking life, human. And no one loves you. And no one gives a fuck about you but your mom and pa. And you probably screwed that up ages ago, so they just consider you a faint relative who sometimes shows up to wash their clothes at them. And you don't talk, and you don't navigate in favor of finding out how to be happy, because of course TV makes you happy, right? Sitting there absorbing that shit and playing those computer games that just waste your time in your mortality, because you're going to fucking die someday, which they don't emphasize either in all that horror and gore, and that you're in fact in a very, very great hurry to both be grateful, responsible, and in love. But you don't do that, because everything we come from is a nature where you as a male is defining yourself through violence, while no one around you teaches you to do that, and everyone frowns upon you when you do that, and nothing in you can relate to how to do that, because you're forced to pet with Kant's categorical imperative, some shitlord philosopher defining the whole of our culture along with Jesus and the markets, saying that you have to be in the shoes of those who you are punishing with your violence, instead of saying, lucky fuck it wasn't you today, in an environment of contradicting interests, and in all this dynamics we're subjugated to, where you have no relation. You can't navigate. You can't find out how to solve this equation when you arrive in the scene 18 to 20 years old, when your parents finally have enough of your insanity, kicks you out, throws you into a small little cell where nothing works. You try to make it nice and tidy so you can be there and call it a home, but it's nothing but a cell where you sit there with your fucking TV, getting indoctrinated, and waste your time in computer games and surfing, learning anything about what goes on around you, but not a fucking thing about what goes on inside of you. And that makes you lame, useless, disgusting, and vain. Nothing you have will mount up into anything, and you will dream about love for resonance in that loneliness at night in that cell where nothing makes sense for you, where you don't have anyone, and where all the relationships you had were crashed before they even began, because you don't have any tools to define yourself as a man, let alone a female, because everything you're told is morals, opinionses, Schunzninger, the opinionses based on absolutely nothing but the disgust of the few, while everyone else tries to navigate from the lowest denominator, which is the disgusting disgust of the few, leading none of you to have anything, while democracy keeps tightening its grip around you, making even more and more laws so you have nothing, while everything you want is everything, and you're told you can be what you want and become a winner. That's incidentally the same as being evil. Conclusion of a situation in elevation and irisy. So you can't be anything but a winner without being evil, which you're told is being wronged by anyone who ever met you. So you can't navigate. So you're spastic in life, and nothing you want will ever amount to anything but a few more gizmos, while the horror and the existential dread is only suffocated by computers, by TV, and by alcohol and drugs. And then maybe you can afford a hookup when you're 35 and give up the hunt, because there's nothing left for you at that age. And you can't certainly marry young, because you don't know how. And no one fucking loves you. Good fucking night.